September 2008. A 27-year-old opens a file on his computer, looks at the numbers, looks again, then quietly tells his boss, "We're finished." $1.2 trillion. Gone. This is how the entire global economy collapsed in a single night. An elevator opens on the 42nd floor of Midtown Manhattan's skyscraper. 4 HR people step out, each one carrying a box, each one holding a list. Everyone on the trading floor knows exactly what that means. They split up, moving fast, hunting specific names. One of those names was Eric Dale. Eric was the head of risk management, 19 years at this firm. His entire job, his only job, was to measure how much danger the company was in at any given moment. Think of him as the guy whose job it was to check if the building was on fire. Minutes later, he's sitting in a glass conference room, the whole floor watching through the walls like it's a zoo exhibit. The firm is offering 6-month severance at half salary. You have until tomorrow to accept. After that, the offer disappears. Eric tries to push back. "What about my current work? I'm in the middle of something important." The firm has a transition plan. "We appreciate your concern." They didn't appreciate anything. They didn't even know what he was working on. They'd already cut his email, his phone, his building access. The guy whose job was to spot danger had just been made invisible, right when the danger was the worst it had ever been. But as Eric packed up his desk, a young analyst named Peter Sullivan was waiting outside. Peter had a PhD in propulsion engineering from MIT, a literal rocket scientist, the kind of brain that could calculate the trajectory of a spacecraft. But Wall Street was paying more than NASA, so here he was, running risk models instead of launching rockets. He just wanted to say thank you to Eric before he left. Eric reached into his box and pulled out a USB drive. "I was close to something. They wouldn't let me finish. Take a look. Be careful." The elevator doors closed. Peter stood there staring at this tiny plastic drive in his hand. He had absolutely no idea he was holding a detonator. Now, to understand why this USB drive was about to detonate the global economy, you need to understand the lie that built it. It started with a question, a simple, irresistible, very American question. Why rent when you can own? And America said, yeah, why the hell not? Banks started handing out mortgages like Halloween candy, no questions asked. A strawberry picker earning $15,000 a year got approved for a $720,000 home loan. A woman in Las Vegas bought 5 investment properties. She worked as a stripper. The bank didn't care. They called these ninja loans. No income, no job, no assets, no problem. Sign here. And here's the thing. The banks giving out these garbage loans genuinely did not care whether the borrowers paid them back, because they weren't planning on keeping the loans. They were going to sell them immediately to someone else, someone on Wall Street. And Wall Street had invented a magic trick. They took thousands of these toxic mortgages, the strawberry picker, the Las Vegas stripper, the guy who had no job and 3 houses, bundled them all together into one giant financial product, slapped a label on it, called it a mortgage-backed security. Think of it like a sausage. Each individual ingredient is questionable. You don't really want to know what's in it. But once you grind it all together and slap a nice label on the package, suddenly it looks fine. It looks great, actually. And the ratings agencies, the people whose entire job was to tell the world how safe these investments were, looked at these bundles of subprime garbage and stamped them AAA, the highest possible rating, as safe as US Treasury bonds, as safe as lending money to the government itself. Someone would eventually ask, but wait, half these borrowers don't even have jobs. And Wall Street would smile and say, half of them do. Glass half full, my friend. AAA it is. Pension funds bought them. Retirement accounts bought them. Banks in Iceland, Ireland, and Germany bought them. Everybody was feasting on the sausages, and nobody wanted to look at what was actually inside. 10:17 p.m. The trading floor was empty. Just Peter. just the hum of servers and the cold glow of monitors. He'd been sitting there for hours working through the file Eric had handed him, a risk analysis on the firm's mortgage-backed securities, the sausages. Eric had been building a model to test what would happen to these assets if the market got volatile. He ran the model, stared at the result, ran it again. Same answer. His hands went cold. He called his colleagues. Come look at this. They gathered around the screen. The model was showing something that was not supposed to be possible. The firm had borrowed insane amounts of money to load up on these mortgage securities. We're talking leverage so extreme that a relatively small drop in value, just 25%, would wipe out the entire company. Not hurt it, not damage it, erase it completely. The model they'd been using to measure risk, called value at risk, worked like a weather forecast. It looked at decades of historical data and said, 99 days out of 100, the worst you'll lose is around $50 million. You're covered. Relax. But here's the fatal flaw nobody wanted to talk about. That model only tells you about the 99 normal days. It says absolutely nothing about the one day that destroys you. And Peter had just realized something terrifying. The hurricane wasn't coming. It was already here. The losses sitting on the firm's books right now had already blown past anything the model thought was mathematically possible. The forecast had failed. The storm had arrived, and the firm was standing in the middle of it holding an umbrella. 11:44 p.m. Sam Rogers, the head of trading, walked in. He looked at the model for 3 full minutes without saying a word. Then he looked at Peter. You're certain? Peter nodded. If you're wrong, you never work again. If you're right, none of us do. Within minutes, the 42nd floor transforms. Executives start arriving one by one. Sarah Robertson, the chief risk officer, Jared Cohen, the head of capital markets, the people who run this place. All of them pulled out of their beds in the middle of the night. Sarah, how did we miss this? She had an answer ready. The math they'd been using assumed independence. If a homeowner in Ohio defaulted on his mortgage, it wouldn't affect a homeowner in Florida. They were separate, unconnected. The model treated every borrower like an island. But the housing bubble had connected every single one of them. When prices started falling, they all fell together. It wasn't one tile, it was the entire floor. And when one tile falls, the whole floor goes. Then a sound on the roof. A corporate helicopter sliced through the Manhattan skyline and landed on top of the building. John Told, the CEO, stepped out. Late 50s. Hadn't been in this building in 2 years. The kind of man who shows up when things are very, very bad. He sat down at the head of the table, looked around the room. Someone tell me the problem. He scanned the faces, then his eyes landed on Peter. Actually, I'd like to hear from the young man who found this. Mr. Sullivan, how old are you? 27, sir. Please call me John. Now speak to me as you might to a golden retriever or a small child. It wasn't brains that brought me to this seat, I can assure you. Peter took a breath and explained it as simply as he could. For the past few years, the firm had been making enormous amounts of money packaging mortgages into tradable securities. But because these products took about a month to package up, the firm had to hold them on their books during that time. And to maximize profits, they'd borrowed massive amounts of money to buy as many of them as possible. They'd pushed their leverage to the absolute limit. They were currently holding $1.2 trillion in these assets. Tolds leaned back. And I'm guessing the math your bosses used in the past doesn't quite work anymore. It's worse than that, sir. The math hasn't worked for 2 weeks. The historical volatility we used to predict the future has already been shattered by what happened over the last 10 days. What does your model say that means for us? If the value of these assets drops by just 25% while they are still on our books, that loss would be greater than the entire value of this company. Told was quiet for a moment. So what you're telling me, Mr. Sullivan, is that the music is about to stop, and we are left holding the biggest bag of stinking garbage in the history of capitalism.
He looked around the room, made his decision in about 4 seconds. Sell it all, today. The room erupted. You're talking about $1 trillion of paper, John. Who are we selling this to? The same people we've been selling to the last 2 years, and whoever else will buy it. Sam pushed back harder. If we do this, we will kill the market for years, maybe forever. And we're selling something we know has no value to people who trust us. Told didn't blink. We are selling to willing buyers at the current market price so that we may survive. You'll never sell anything to these people again.
I understand. Do you? Do you really? This is it, Sam. Told pulled Sarah Robertson aside after the meeting, just the two of them in a private room. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't need to. Sarah had flagged warnings about this problem over a year ago, had sent memos, had raised her hand, had been told in no uncertain terms that it didn't matter. And now the board needed someone to point to. The SEC would want a name. The media would want a face. Someone had to take the fall. And the people who give the orders never do. 7:30 a.m. 33 traders filed onto the floor in silence. These were the golden boys of Wall Street, usually loud, arrogant, untouchable. The guys who ordered bottles at dinner without looking at the price. Today, they looked like they were walking toward an electric chair. Sam Rogers stood at the front. He'd been their mentor for decades. He was the man who taught every single one of them that in this business, your word is your bond. Your reputation is everything. The relationship is the asset. He looked them in the eye. Today, we are liquidating our entire mortgage portfolio, every single cent. You have until the closing bell to move it all. If you hit your targets, you'll each receive a $1.4 million bonus. The great betrayal began. The traders sat down, picked up their phones, and started calling the people who trusted them most. College roommates, old friends, counterparts they'd built relationships with over years. Hey Marcus, it's Will. Listen, I've got some risk I need to move. My loss is your gain today, buddy. I'll give you a discount, 96 cents on the dollar. Marcus, on the other end, thought he was getting a deal. He trusted Will. He bought $100 million of worthless sausage. By 10 a.m., the secret started leaking. The street began to realize this wasn't a normal trade. It was a full liquidation. Panic set in. The phone calls got uglier. Will, I'm looking at these numbers. This stuff is toxic. Why the hell are you selling this to me? I'm just following orders, Leo. You want the remaining 30-year mixed or not? I'm at 85 cents. The price didn't stop at 85. It cratered to 73, then 64. By 3:54 p.m., they made their last call. They'd sold nearly all of it. The firm was saved. The world was not. Margin Call is a movie. The characters are fictional. The firm has no name. But the crisis it's based on, every single bit of that was real. This exact scenario played out across every major bank on Wall Street in September 2008. And in the 2 years that followed, the real world felt every last consequence. Mortgage rates doubled. Pension funds packed with those AAA sausages lost 40% of their value. 6 million families lost their homes. $11 trillion in wealth simply evaporated, not transferred, not moved, gone. Neighborhoods became ghost towns, welcome mats replaced by foreclosure signs. And the government? They stepped in and wrote a $700 billion check to rescue the banks, the same institutions that built the bomb, lit the fuse, and walked away. The people who give the orders never do take the fall. By evening, the lights were off. The trading floor that had been screaming with activity just hours ago was completely silent. Phones that hadn't stopped ringing all day, dead. Screens that had been tracking every fraction of every cent, dark. Everyone was gone, laid off, just like that. Except Sam Rogers. Sam found John Told in the executive dining room, alone, jacket off, cutting into a steak like it was any other Tuesday night, like nothing had happened, like the world outside wasn't on fire. Sam sat down across from him. I want out, John. I'm done. Told didn't look up from his plate. Sit down, Sam. You'll get your bonus, but I need you for another 24 months. Sam stared at him for a moment. You know what I keep thinking about? If I'd spent the last 40 years digging ditches, at least there'd be some holes in the ground to show for it. At least something would exist. At least something would be real. Told set down his fork. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Then he leaned back and said something that has stuck with people ever since. It's just money, Sam. It's made up. Pieces of paper with pictures on them so we don't kill each other for food. He wasn't wrong, not entirely. 1637, 1857, 1929, 2000. It's the same story over and over. Different names, different products, same ending. We can't stop it. We never could. We just react. And when the dust settles, the percentages of winners and losers stay exactly the same. Fat gots and starving dogs. It never changes. Sam looked at him. And you really believe that? That there's no right or wrong here? That it's all just a cycle? Told picked his fork back up. No right, no wrong, just reaction. A long silence. Then Sam nodded. I'll stay. He paused. Not because of your speech, because I need the money. And that's the most honest thing anyone said in this entire story. Not the CEO justifying $1 trillion betrayal. Not the risk officer who got thrown under the bus for doing her job. Not the traders who called their friends and sold them garbage with a smile. Just a tired man in an empty room admitting that the system had him too. The 2008 financial crisis didn't happen because of evil people twirling mustaches in dark rooms. It happened because of incentives, because everyone, the banks, the ratings agencies, the traders, the buyers, the government, was getting paid to keep the music playing. Nobody wanted to be the one to turn it off. And when it finally stopped on its own, 6 million families paid the price. Not the people in that dining room, not the people on that trading floor, not the people who designed the sausage machine. The people who just wanted to own a home. That's margin call. And if it feels uncomfortably familiar, it should. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the next cycle has already started. We just don't know who's holding the USB drive yet.